Storytelling Through the Years by Kristen Marciniak. Table of Contents. Oral Traditions. Page 4. Using Song to Tell Stories. Page 5. Puppets in Storytelling. Page 6. Folk Tales. Page 7. Legends. Page 9. Myths. Page 10. How Technology Changed Storytelling. Page 11. Storytelling Today. Page 14. Suppose you are sitting with your friends and family around a campfire roasting marshmallows and telling stories. Your older brother begins to tell a scary story. Once upon a time, there was a hideous dragon that lived inside a volcano. He begins. The volcano was always exploding, and the dragon was always roaring. Everyone was afraid of the dragon. Some scary stories are passed from generation to generation. Your older brother tells the story, but he heard it from your mother. Your mother first heard it from her mother, and so on. This is an example of an oral tradition. Oral tradition. Oral tradition, or storytelling, is a way of passing history and stories from one generation to another. Before the printing press was invented, storytelling was one of the only ways that many societies were able to keep records. If people didn't share their stories, an immense amount of history would be lost. Since stories were not written down, storytellers had to rely on their memories. Storytellers would learn the basic plot and then make up details as they went along. That is why there are sometimes many versions of the same story. Using songs to tell stories. Storytellers sometimes sang their stories. A ballad, also known as a folk song, is a story in song. They might tell about a prince who becomes invisible to rescue a princess. Some storytellers use ballads to tell their tales. Puppets in storytelling. Have you ever been to a puppet show? The art of using puppets to tell stories has been around for thousands of years. This art form began in ancient Greece. In ancient India, puppets were used to tell religious and historical stories about kings, gods, and other events. A story might be about a warrior who refuses to give up. Puppet shows continue to delight audiences even today. Puppets were used to tell stories before actors performed them. Folk tales. Oral stories also were used to teach lessons. There are many different kinds of stories, but some common ones are folk tales, legends, and myths. Folk tales are fictional stories about people or animals that speak and act like people. Fairy tales are one type of folk tale. Folk tales teach lessons about how people are supposed to act. Good characters always win in the end, but they only get there with determination. For example, in the story of Cinderella, we learn that being wealthy and important are not the ways to happiness. Native Americans used storytelling to pass down their cultural history. Folk tales were originally stories for adults. They were popular entertainment for farmers, sailors, and other workers. Many of them did not know how to read. In addition, many Native Americans and American slaves used oral traditions to preserve their history. Today, some tribes in Africa still use oral storytelling as the main way to keep records of events. Legends. Unlike folk tales, legends are stories that are thought to be true. Legends are always about a person or subject that many people believed was real. Most legends are about kings, heroes, or a battle. Famous legends include the stories of Robin Hood and King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. The legend of the sword in the stone tells how King Arthur became the king of Britain. Myths. Another type of story is a myth. Myths are sacred stories from the past that explain a culture's beliefs and values. Myths are also used to explain unusual events or how something came to exist. Most myths come from religion. The ancient Greeks had many myths that are still around today. Hercules is one of those myths. He was very strong and brave. The story of Hercules is an example of a Greek myth. Writing helped to change the way stories are shared. How technology changed storytelling. Technology has shaped the way stories are passed from generation to generation. Writing has been found carved on stones and walls from thousands of years ago. Paper was later invented in ancient China, but people still had to write by hand. During the 14th and 17th centuries, people were hired to copy texts into books. This, however, was a very slow process. In the mid-1400s, a German inventor named Johannes Gutenberg made the first printing press. Gutenberg's first version was made of blocks with raised letters. The letters were inked much like the rubber stamps you can buy in craft stores today. This invention made it much easier to print books. Johannes Gutenberg was born in Mainz, Germany, around 1400. He worked as a stone cutter and goldsmith. These experiences helped him to create the metal molds for the letters. The invention of the printing press did not decrease the importance of oral traditions. Except for those who were rich, most people did not know how to read. They also were not able to get the printed books. Books became more widely available with the invention of the monotype machine in 1897. This meant that the books were less expensive than before, so more people were able to read them. The printing press made it much easier to print books and share stories. Storytelling today. Today, modern technology helps us publish stories at astonishing rates. Newspapers tell us what's going on, and we read books for education and entertainment. The Internet also allows us to access information quickly. Despite all of these forms of media, traces of oral storytelling are all around. Each time you share a bedtime story, a joke, or a family legend with others, you are helping to keep the oral tradition alive. Most people still like to listen to a good story. Responding. Target vocabulary. Word builder. Make a word web around the word hideous. What synonyms do you know for the word hideous? Copy and complete the word web below. Write about it. Text to text. You just read about how stories have been shared. Write a paragraph describing a story you have read that may have started in the oral tradition. Use a word from the word builder in your writing. Target vocabulary. Battle. Exploding. Hideous. Hired. immense, invisible, refused, rescue, warrior, wealthy. Target strategy. Infer, predict. Use text clues to figure out what isn't directly stated by the author. Word teaser. Which word rhymes with a word that describes how you feel when you are ready for bed?